Alrighty, so we're trying to figure out if it's continuous at pi, and so to do that, because we have a piecewise function, we're going to have to go through the checklist. So remember, at the end of the day, it's does the function value equal the limit? So the first thing we'll do is we'll look at f, and they specifically ask, is it continuous at pi? And it makes sense again that they're asking about pi because pi is the split point for this function. So for f of pi, we look at where the equal to is. So the equal to in these inequalities is in the first piece. So we will plug into the first piece of pi for the x, sine of pi. Remember that sine of pi, we're over here at pi. The y coordinate is equal to 0. So sine of pi will be 0 times pi will just give us 0. So our function value is going to be equal to 0. Now, the second thing that we need to do is look at the limit, and we want the limit to exist. So whenever I have a piecewise function, I like to draw a little picture and say, okay, to the left of pi, I am defined by x sine x, and to the right of pi, I am defined as x tangent x. Now, if this two-sided limit is going to exist, I am going to need that this one-sided limit, so the limit as x goes to pi from the left, I'll need that that function's limit will be equal to the limit as x goes to pi from the right. And again, from the left, it will be defined by x sine x, and from the right, it's defined as x tangent x. Now, if you forget about the little line and everything, and you just say, how do I find out these limits? So again, we're trying to figure out if this is a true statement. To find this first limit, we would plug in our pi. So we'd have pi sine pi. And again, the question is, does that equal the limit on the right? And if I were to find the limit on the right, I would plug in pi into the function. Now, sine of pi we've talked about is equal to 0. The question is tangent of pi. Tangent, remember, is sine over cosine. So the sine of pi is equal to 0, cosine is -1. So this will evaluate to 0 over -1 times pi. But of course, 0 over -1 is just 0, so we have 0 times pi, so we have 0 is equal to 0. Now that's good news, because when we have that the left limit and the right limit are the same, that tells us that the limit as x goes to pi of the f of x function is equal to 0. So what we have found is that our limit is equal to 0. Our function value is also equal to 0. And so because those are the same, the limit is equal to the function, that tells us that yes, it is continuous at pi, x is equal to pi.